Hello and welcome to The Analyst dated 20th July 2023 by Vajiram and Ravi, wherein we cover the important current affairs articles from both the Hindu as well as Indian Express. And the handout of this very discussion would be provided to you in the description below. So let's have a look over the articles that we are going to cover today. So today we are going to first understand the role of opposition political parties in a democracy. Then we'll be looking into this issue of marital rape. Then we'll try to understand the concept of Hazard-Zonation Mapping. Then we'll be looking into the organization called NATO, because recently its summit was organized in Lithuania. And then we'll be looking into this Black Sea Grain Initiative, because Russia has extended this very initiative. So let's begin. So the first article relates to role of opposition in a democracy, and this article relates to this very topic of your GS paper 2 syllabus. Let's try and understand the context. So the context is, recently 26 opposition political parties have come together and they have formed an opposition coalition alliance, which they have named as India. Now in this regard, whatever political news is going on, that is of no use for our UPSC preparation. What we need to understand from our UPSC means perspective is, what is the role of opposition in a democracy? What crucial role the opposition political party plays in a democracy? The opposition political party play a very crucial role in holding the executive accountable through a lot of ways. First is through parliamentary committees. Examples are Public Accounts Committee, which holds the executive accountable in the financial domain. Then we have Committee on Government Assurances, which basically looks into this aspect that whether the promises the ministers are making at the floor of the house, are they adhering to them or not. But right now what we are witnessing is, through this parliamentary committees, the opposition political parties are not able to hold the executive accountable. Why so? Because according to the PRS report, in the 15th Lok Sabha, around 71% of the bills were being referred to the parliamentary committees for scrutiny. But in the 17th Lok Sabha, only 12% of the bills are being referred to the parliamentary committees. So on account of this, the opposition political parties are not able to hold the executive accountable through this device of parliamentary committees. Then the opposition political party also play a major role in doing detailed scrutiny of the bills. But sadly, what is happening right now in India, in the 16th as well as in the 17th Lok Sabha, no opposition political party had the requisite numbers to get the designation of leader of opposition. And on account of this, what we are witnessing is, according to PRS, again, in the monsoon session of 2021, 20 bills were passed without detailed scrutiny of the bills. And in 16th Lok Sabha, what we witnessed is, more than 80% of the budget was passed without much debate and discussion. So through this, we can understand that the opposition political parties are not able to hold the executive accountable by doing detailed scrutiny of the bills, because they are not able to do the scrutiny of the bills. Then the opposition political party play a very important role in raising the issues which are of great public importance. Previously, the opposition political party raised the issue of Citizenship Amendment Act, then Pegasus issue, then the issue of management of COVID-19 pandemic, etc. And right now also, since the monsoon session of the parliament is going to be organized, the opposition political party has stated that they are going to raise the issue of Manipur violence, the train accident which took place in Odisha, etc. But what we are witnessing right now is, since the opposition political parties do not have the requisite numbers in the house, the ruling political party is basically sidelining the opposition political party. For example, the opposition political party was not allowed to raise the issue of Pegasus issue, the Adani Hindenburg issue. And currently also, the ruling government is planning to sideline the opposition political party in the upcoming monsoon session of the parliament by raising the issue of poll violence in the West Bengal region. So, on account of lack of requisite numbers, the opposition political party is not able to hold the executive accountable, which is one of the crucial function of the opposition political parties. Then the opposition political party play a very crucial role in strengthening the public voices. How come? By giving support to the social movements, which relates to, doing away with corruption, which relates to rise in inflation in India. And currently also the opposition political party supported the farmers' protest against the farm bills. Then the opposition political party also play a very major role in strengthening and safeguarding the democracy. How come? By bringing diverse opinion with regard to a particular bill. And this was something that we witnessed with regard to data protection bill. On account of opposition from the political parties, the ruling government has to ultimately withdraw this data protection bill. And with the reforms which were suggested by the opposition political parties, through incorporating those reforms, the renewed data protection bill is scheduled to be tabled in the upcoming monsoon session of the parliament. Then the opposition political party also play a very major role in preventing this phenomenon of committed bureaucracy. What is committed bureaucracy? Wherein the government officials are loyal to the ruling government. And when the opposition political party have the requisite numbers, then the bureaucracy has the incentive to be neutral. But when the ruling government is formed through absolute majority, then we witness this phenomenon of committed bureaucracy. So with this we can understand that opposition political party has a very important role to play in the democracy. But what we are currently witnessing in India is, since the opposition political party lack the requisite numbers, the ruling political party is not allowing the opposition political party to raise certain issues. For example, it did not allow the opposition political party to raise the Pegasus issue, to raise the Adani-Hindenburg issue, and currently also, although the opposition political parties are saying that they are going to raise a lot of issues like Manipur violence, like the train accident in Odisha, etc., but the ruling government is basically planning to sideline the opposition political party by raising the issue of poll violence in West Bengal. Now, let's have a look over the ways that we can adopt to strengthen the role of opposition political parties in India especially. We can adopt the system of shadow cabinet, which is prevalent in UK, which basically, the shadow cabinet basically consists the senior members of the opposition political party, which are basically going to streamline the criticism or the views of the opposition political party with regard to the bills being introduced by the ruling political party. Then we can adopt this concept of opposition days, which is already prevalent in UK and Canada, wherein for the majority of the days, the ruling government gets the power to decide the agenda. What is agenda? Basically the matters that the House is going to discuss on a particular day. But in opposition days, we allow the opposition political parties also to decide the agenda of the House for certain days. Okay? Then the opposition political party also need to bring out certain reforms in themselves as well. What we are currently witnessing in India is, we have a lot of regional political parties. They do not have a common leadership. They have different ideologies and different ways of working. They do not have a common agenda, which they can basically provide as an alternative to the electorate. So, the opposition political party needs to bring in this requisite reforms. They need to come up with a common leadership. They need to, streamline their ideologies, and they need to come up with the agenda, which can basically act as an alternative for the electorate when it comes to the ruling political party. Then, they also need to adopt innovative ways. What the opposition political parties have been doing right now, either they walk out of the House or they sensitize a particular issue because live telecasting of the parliamentary proceedings is being done. But in order to reach to the electorate, the opposition political party actually needs to work at the grassroots level. They need to understand what are the real demands and needs of the Indian society. And accordingly, they should come up with an agenda, a common agenda. And Instead of adopting this previous ways, they should move towards social media to attract the youth basically. They should carry out virtual rallies and they should reach out to the youth by making use of social media. This is all that we need to know with regard to this article. Let's move to the next one. Now this next article relates to the issue of marital rape in India, and this issue pertains to this very topic of your GS paper 1 syllabus. Let's try and understand the context. So the context is, recently the Supreme Court has agreed to list the pleas which seeks to criminalize marital rape before a 3-judge bench of the Supreme Court. Now in this regard, first thing that you need to understand is, what is marital rape? As the name itself suggests, it basically refers to forced sexual relationship between husband and wife, wherein one of the partner is not giving consent to building sexual relationship. But when it comes to India, till now marital rape has not been criminalized in India. Why? Because it has been exempted under section 375 of Indian Penal Code, which states that the sexual intercourse between man and his wife, which is not aged less than 18 years, would not be considered as rape. Okay, so the sexual relationship between husband and a wife which is basically greater than 18 years of age would not be considered as rape. Okay, so it is exempted under section 375 of Indian Penal Code. The next aspect that we need to understand with regard to this issue is, what are the arguments which are being put forth for criminalization of marital rape? First is to realize the idea of equality, which is enshrined under Article 14 of the Indian Constitution. See, when it comes to this marital rape, it is basically based on a colonial doctrine of curvature, which basically merges the identity of husband and wife, which does not treat the wife and the husband equally. Thus, it is a violation of Article 14, which is enshrined in our Indian Constitution. So, in order to realize Article 14, we need to criminalize marital rape. Then, in order to realize this right to bodily integrity, which is an integral part of Article 21, which relates to personal liberty. And in Suchitra Srivastav versus Chandigarh Administration 2009 judgment, the Supreme Court has clearly stated that the right to make sexual choices is an integral part of Article 21, which deals with right to personal liberty. So we need to realize that women also have right to bodily integrity. Then rape is after all a rape. Why, when this same act is being done by a unknown person, it is criminalized, but when it is done by husband, it is provided protection under the Indian Penal Code. You will be astonished to know that according to the UN Population Fund report, more than 2/3 of the married women are forced to give sex. So in this regard, we need to protect the woman. We need to criminalize marital rape. Then, given the international practice, more than 100 nations have already criminalized marital rape. And even the UK, based on which we are still not criminalizing marital rape, UK has also criminalized marital rape. Then, in this regard, J.S. Verma Committee and UN Committee on Elimination of Discrimination Against Women in 2013, they have argued for criminalization of marital rape. Let's have a look over the against argument as well, that why we should not criminalize marital rape. First and foremost, when it comes to the parliamentarians, they believe that if we criminalize marital rape, it is going to destabilize the marriage as an institution, which is considered to be a very sacred institution when it comes to the Indian society. Then there are chances that if we criminalize marital rape, it would be used as a tool to harass the husbands. because we are witnessing a lot of false cases are being filed under 498A of IPC, which basically punishes the husband and his in-laws if they do harassment of a married woman. So the critics have pointed out that if we criminalize marital rape, then the wives might use this thing to harass the husbands. We could witness misuse of laws. Then the major challenge is implementational issues. What evidence the court is going to consider when it comes to deciding that marital rape has happened or not? Because everything is going to happen in closed doors. And whose statement are we going to take into consideration that whether marital rape has happened or not? So this is one of the major issues when it comes to criminalizing the marital rape. Then the Law Commission and the Parliamentary Committee on Home Affairs are not in favor of criminalizing marital rape. And lastly, criminalizing marital rape, bringing changes in the law, is not going to actually change the picture at the ground. Because we have law for, against domestic violence, we have law against sexual harassment at workplace. But what is happening? Even today, such acts are being carried out. So ultimately, what we need to do in the long run is we need to change the patriarchal mindset, which is basically the root cause on account of which we are witnessing marital rape in India. Because even today, men feel that their wife are their own personal property. And women do not have the right to say no when it comes to building sexual relationship with his wife. They do not recognize that women have their bodily integrity. So we need to basically counter this patriarchal mindset through carrying out requisite sensitization campaigns in this regard. Let's see what the Supreme Court decides on this very issue. This is all that we need to know with regard to this article. Let's move to the third one. Now this third article relates to this very topic of your GS paper 3 syllabus, and we also have a previous year question in this regard. So after listening to this discussion, try to attempt this previous year question. Let's try and understand the context. So the context is, according to the writer, the monsoon is becoming increasingly unpredictable in India. Why? On account of El Nino, on account of Indian Ocean Dipole, on account of Maiden-Julian Oscillation, on account of climate change. And since the monsoon is becoming quite unpredictable, what we are witnessing at one end, at the western coast, we are witnessing cyclones like Biparjoy. Then in the central, eastern and northern parts of India, what we are witnessing is heat stress. So on account of this variability in the monsoon, various regions in India are witnessing a lot of hazards. For example, we are witnessing the phenomena of urban floods in Delhi, in Chennai, in Hyderabad, Mumbai, etc. Then we are witnessing the issue of cloudburst, which recently took place in the Himachal Pradesh region. And on account of this cloudburst, what we witnessed is flash floods in Himachal Pradesh and Haryana region this year only, in June. And on account of increased rainfall, at one go, in Sikkim, we witnessed landslide. So through this we can understand that on account of variability in the monsoon, different regions of India are witnessing different set of hazards. So in this limelight, in this background only, the writer is making the argument that we need to move in the direction of hazard-zonation mapping. First and foremost, we need to understand is what is hazard-zonation mapping. It simply implies it is a process wherein you identify and delineate the regions which are more prone to a specific natural hazard. So in this, basically, we come up with such kind of a map which identifies that this place is more prone to a particular hazard, and it basically enables us to do effective disaster mitigation, disaster preparedness and adequate planning as well. Now, in this Hazard-Zonation Mapping, there are various steps which are involved. First is hazard identification. So in this, you basically identify, okay, which hazard, earthquake, tsunami, landslide, which hazard we are going to map, okay? Then you collect data. You look into geographical data, you look into hydrological data, you look into the historical data, okay? The historical data which basically gives you the idea that, okay, this particular region is more prone to floods, okay? So by collecting these data, we basically come to a conclusion that, okay, these areas are more prone to a particular disaster. So after collecting the data, what we do is we do hazard modeling, wherein we put in all this data that we have collected and we use mathematical tools, which again looks into the topography, the hydrology and the precipitation pattern in a particular region to, identify that, okay, let's suppose this area has been more prone to a particular disaster. Now, given the previous data that we have, what is the chances that this area would again witness that particular disaster? This is something that we do in hazard modeling. Then we do the vulnerability assessment. We basically look into this aspect that how much vulnerable is the infrastructure in that region, how much vulnerable is the human population in that region. Okay. And after doing this hazard modeling and after doing this vulnerability assessment, we come up with zonation mapping. In zonation mapping, basically, you get this kind of a map which basically identify that, okay, this particular region is more prone to a particular natural disaster. For example, this area is more prone to flood. So we come with color-coded areas, okay, and then in this zonation mapping, we also categorize that, okay, this particular region is more prone to earthquake, another area is less prone to earthquake. So we give the degrees and the ranking also, that which area is more prone to a particular disaster based on the degree, that what are the chances and what have been the previous record that this area has been more prone to a particular natural disaster. Now, based on this vulnerability assessment and zonation mapping, because we have got the map that, okay, let's suppose this area is more prone to flood and this area is more prone to cyclone. Now, based on this, we can do the risk assessment. We know that, okay, this area, the infrastructure is more prone to cyclone, and so based on this, we can do the risk assessment. What all measures we need to take in order to minimize the vulnerability or in order to minimize the risk or the consequences of a particular hazard. So based on that, we can take adequate measures. This is something which comes under the risk assessment. Now, the thing that we need to understand is what is the need of hazard zonation mapping. First is it enables us to come up with effective disaster mitigation strategies. For example, we know that Odisha is highly prone to cyclones. So in this area, the nature-based approach was adopted. Mangrove belt was improved, okay, in this region, which basically minimized the consequences of cyclone in Odisha region. Then it also enables us to come up with, disaster resilient infrastructure. That is also something which comes under the mitigation measures. Then it also enables us to take adequate disaster preparedness measures. We can prepare our disaster management forces and we can also prepare the people who are living in that region. We can carry out mock drills in accordance with the hazard which that area is more prone to. Then we can go with effective planning. For example, we know that, okay, in this region, this area is more prone, okay, a particular region is more prone to flood. So instead of carrying out infrastructure development in this region, I would rather prefer to carry out infrastructure development in another region. If a region is more prone to flood or landslide, we need to, avoid infrastructure activities and more tourism in that region. So this enables us to do effective planning as well, urban planning. Then it enables us to create more awareness and education. See, when it comes to minimizing the risk of a hazard, it is not only the authorities which can, do everything. We need people's participation in this. For example, if an area is more drought prone, the farmers there needs to grow more drought resistant crops. If an area is more prone to landslides, then the farmer needs to grow, should practice terrace farming, which would basically enable us to reduce the impact or the consequences of the landslides when it comes to agriculture yield. And we need the citizens' participation when it comes to carrying out afforestation exercises, okay, in order to adopt nature-based approach, because we cannot reclaim a wetland or we cannot carry out agroforestry until and unless we have the citizens' participation. Then it also enables the government officials to take timely policy interventions. For example, if the government knows that okay, this region is more prone to cyclone, so it can put in the requisite early warning system in this. For example, we have sea flows, which is an early warning system for urban floods. So likewise, the government would be able to come up with adequate policy intervention, knowing this fact that okay, this area is more prone to a particular disaster. For example, if an area is more prone to flood again, then the government can build dams there. And if the government knows that okay, this particular region is more prone to flood and this region is more prone to drought, so what we can do is we can do interlinking of rivers. So when we have Hazard-Zonation Mapping, it enables the government authorities to take timely policy interventions as well. This is all that we need to know with regard to this article. Let's move to the next one. Now the next one relates to NATO, and this relates to this very topic of your prelim syllabus. Let's try and understand the context. So the context is, over the last years, a lot of questions were raised with regard to the relevance of NATO, that is North Atlantic Treaty Organization. But in the background of Russia-Ukraine war, its relevance has increased. Not just its relevance, but it has even given force to this aspect of expansion of NATO, and the NATO members now feel that we need to strengthen the NATO as well. This was something which was highlighted in the recent NATO Summit, which was organized in Vilnius, which is the capital of Lithuania. Now in this regard, first thing that you need to understand is what is NATO. NATO is basically a military alliance of 30 countries, and this organization basically came up in 1949 to counter the Soviet Union during the Cold War period. And its current objective is to safeguard the security of its member countries. These are its current members, 30 members. Now the next aspect that we need to understand with regard to NATO is what is the procedure to get the membership of NATO. Now any country can get the membership of NATO if it shows the willingness that I want to join NATO. And after the country has shown the willingness, the NATO Council would be looking into this aspect that whether we should invite this particular country or not. And in order to invite a country to become a member of NATO, this decision needs to be taken by the NATO Council unanimously. That means you need the support of all the present members in order to invite a particular nation to become a member of NATO. This was the reason that Sweden was not able to become the member previously. Now it has become a member of NATO because its membership was basically blocked by Turkey and Hungary. So after the NATO Council has approved that okay, you can now come and join the NATO as a member, then the country needs to satisfy certain commitments which are mentioned in the membership action plan. What are the requirements? The country needs to prove that it is a democratic nation, it has a functioning market economy, it is willing to contribute to the military strength of NATO, and it is ready or it is committed to further the political and economic goals of NATO. It also needs to show that it is committed to rule of law, it is committed to ensuring international stability, etc. And once this membership action plan is approved, then that particular country becomes a member of NATO. Now, the next aspect that we need to understand with regard to this article is, what is the NATO stand when it comes to Ukraine entry? The NATO has not offered membership action plan to Ukraine. However, it has clearly stated that Ukraine is a valuable partner when it comes to NATO, and NATO is committed to provide military support to Ukraine in the background of Russia-Ukraine war. Why NATO is not providing Ukraine the membership? There are certain reasons for that. First is, if the NATO gives Ukraine the membership of NATO, then there is a risk of escalation of tensions between NATO and Russia. Then the NATO Council has yet not been able to gain the support of all the members. For example, Turkey is basically preventing the Ukraine from becoming a NATO member. And as I've told you, in the membership action plan, the country which intends to become a member of NATO, it needs to satisfy certain criteria. However, the Ukraine have made certain progress on those regards. That is, it has to have a democratic credential, it has to have functioning market economy, it needs to be willing to contribute to the military and the political and economic goals of NATO. But there are certain things on which the Ukraine still needs to work upon. This is all that we need to know with regard to this article. Let's move to the next one. Now, this last article relates to the UN Black Sea Grain Initiative. This article relates to this very topic of your GS paper 3 syllabus. We also have a map based question in this regard. So after listening to the discussion, try to attempt this previous year question. Let's try and understand the context. The context is, recently India has supported UN's effort of continuing the Black Sea Grain Initiative, and it has expressed hope that the early resolution to this impasse could be addressed. Now, what has recently happened is, Russia has walked out of this Black Sea Grain Initiative, which was basically supposed to end in this week only. It is not ready, Russia is not ready to extend this Black Sea Grain Initiative. Now, in this regard, first thing that we need to understand is the mapping aspect with regard to Black Sea. Now, Black Sea is basically an inland sea which connects the European region with the Asian region. And it is bounded by Ukraine on the north and northwest, Russia and Georgia to the east, Turkey to the south, and Bulgaria and Romania to the west. Other mapping aspect you also need to make note of. Here we have Sea of Azov. This is Kerch Strait. Then this is Black Sea. This is Bosphorus Strait. This is Sea of Marmara. And this is Dardanelles Strait, and this is Aegean Sea. These mapping aspects please make note of, because since this initiative is highly in news, it is expected that in the prelims you might get a question based on mapping. Now let's try and understand the Black Sea Grain Initiative. What is this initiative all about? Now, since Russia-Ukraine war was going on, so as we know that Ukraine is one of the largest exporter of food grains, that is wheat and corn, and it is also one of the major contributors to UN food aid programs. Now we know that in the background of Russia-Ukraine war, Russia captured the ports of Ukraine. On account of this, the Ukraine was not able to export the food grains. Now what happened on account of this? The food prices escalated to a great extent. And this raised the fear of food insecurity, especially in the poor nations like African nations. Pakistan also witnessed, huge increase in food prices. Now, in this background, UN and Turkey basically negotiated this Black Sea Grain Initiative in 2022. What is basically this initiative? Under this initiative, Russia would allow the export of food grains and fertilizers, including the ammonia, basically the Ukrainian exports from 3 Ukrainian ports, Chornomorsk, Odessa and Yuzi, to the rest of the world. In this regard, we have a joint coordination center which basically have representative from Russia, from Turkey, United Nations and Ukraine, which basically looks into the implementation of this initiative. Then the next aspect that we need to understand is what is the procedure that is followed in this Green Sea initiative. In this, the Ukraine cargo ships are allowed to pass only after inspection, okay, at the Istanbul port, wherein the Russia basically looks into this aspect that whether the cargo ships are carrying any arms, ammunitions or not. If that is not the case, then it is allowed to pass through these 3 Ukrainian ports. And this is the humanitarian zone which has been provided in the Black Sea, that is 310 nautical miles long and 3 nautical miles wide. Okay, so it can export the food grains and the fertilizers to the poor nations, and when the cargo ships again would be coming back, then again at this Istanbul port the inspection would be carried out that whether this cargo ship is carrying any arms and ammunitions or not. Okay, this is regarding the procedure aspect. Now the last aspect that you need to understand is why Russia is withdrawing from this very initiative. 2 arguments Russia has floated in this regard. First is the Ukraine has been able to export its food grain and fertilizers on account of this initiative, whereas on the other hand, Russia has not been able to export its food grain because West has imposed a lot of sanction against Russian exports. It has been cut off out of the SWIFT, which is the international payments platform, and various restrictions have been imposed by the West when it comes to insurance, when it comes to shipping and lot of logistics. So on account of Western sanctions, the Russia is not able to export its food grain and fertilizers, because Russia is also a major player when it comes to the food grain exports, the wheat exports and the fertilizer export. And another point which the Russia has made is, in the name of this Black Sea Grain Initiative, what the Ukraine is actually doing is, it is exporting the food grains to the high and middle income countries, basically the Eastern European nations, instead of supplying that food grain and fertilizer to the poor nations which are there in the African continent. This is all that we need to know with regard to this article. Thank you for listening to this discussion. All the very best for your preparation.